All right. We are going. We were rolling. We've got another great episode here. So it's me, joined with a lot of brain power. First off, we have Amy Curtis, who has a lot of titles, and I actually had to write them down because it's so many words. My puny brain cannot figure it out. Licensed professional counselor, senior director of counseling and mental health services at Buckner International, Titan friend, and she's here to talk with us about invisible disabilities. We're going to talk about a lot of different, that's like an umbrella, right? So if you could kick us started first, and then we'll bring Jennifer into the conversation. So invisible disabilities, what does that mean? What's invisible?
Well, obviously, it's things that are not seen. We go through our daily lives, and I don't know if you've been in this situation. I certainly have, where I've been sitting in a grocery store line, and I'm like, why is this person not moving any faster? Or I'm behind somebody in traffic, and I'm like, why do they not know where they're going? And I get really frustrated. But also, on the other hand, there are people that are just managing chronic illness and so happy that they can make it to the grocery store that day and are maneuvering through the
Yeah,
line,
just being there is an
just being
accomplishment for
there.
some people.
And so I think overall it's just recognizing, and we hear this, I've heard this all my life. My father was a Baptist minister, and he used to always say, be kind, you never know what other people are going through. And I think that could not be more true than when it comes to hidden disabilities, that we never know what somebody else is going through because it's not exterior. We may not be able to see, somebody may not be in a wheelchair, but may be in constant pain just trying to navigate from a door to an aisle or to a chair. And so we just need to be mindful of that.
Right, because when I hear disability, and probably a lot of people are like me, you think of wheelchair, you think
Mhm.
of like sign language. Some that's the things that come to mind. But that's not necessarily the case, and that's physical as well as mental. And you definitely can't see that. But those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. And that's an umbrella that covers a wide range of disabilities that people have in just everyday life. Like this isn't we're not talking about special ed necessarily. We're talking about people fully functional in society going about their lives that you can't necessarily tell. I guess I'm right in assuming that. You sent me a statistic earlier this week that was 1 in 6 people have a disability,
Mhm.
and 80% of those are invisible.
Yes.
So that means me, y'all in here, Zach, our camera guy, everybody listening to this, through the course of a day, you are running across multiple people with like a disability that might explain some things if you actually knew about.
Right.
So I guess maybe the takeaway by the time this is over is to maybe sort of recognize those and have a little empathy, I guess, for that sort of situation people sort of find themselves in. So 1 in 6, has that always been that way? We're talking 80% of those are invisible. Is that better diagnosis? Is that a rise in something that we don't know yet? How are we seeing such a high? That seems like a high number to me.
I mean, I would say I don't know that those were always recognized, and so I don't know that the statistics have really changed. I think it's probably always been that number. I just don't know that we were offering the accommodations and supports
Yeah.
that we do now and have the awareness. I don't know. You
Yeah.
agree?
I agree with that. I think, especially when it comes to learning disabilities, which would
Mm-hmm.
be a neurodivergence. When we're talking about autism and ADHD, obviously we have better diagnostic
Mm.
tools. We have a
Mm-hmm.
better scientific kind of definition
Yeah.
of what all is a qualifying criteria for those diagnoses. And so when you start adding all of that in, you do see more people being diagnosed today, as a result of just better tools to be able to recognize what is happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, we're just going to just roll with that right into our first topic. So we're going to break these for the folks at home. So
Mhm.
we're going to break these into like three sort of categories, and we're going to swap out. I'm going to call specialists in those. So the first that we're going to talk about is cognitive functioning. So when we're talking about the spectrum. I guess that could roll into that pretty easily,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're talking about, well, it's better diagnosis, we're more aware of these things. That's probably true, because I mean, I'm 46, so I go back a little bit, and we just called them nerds. In school, it was just the nerds and the geeks, the socially awkward
Mm-hmm.
indoor kid. Um, and they were everywhere. And so you think, like, man, there's so many kids nowadays with autism, on the spectrum. What's going on? That was probably what that was. We just didn't
Exactly.
recognize it.
And I wish I had known, because
Right.
then I think I would have treated that child totally different. As
Yeah.
a young person, I would have recognized, oh, okay, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Instead of just thinking, why are they not looking at me? Or, why are they looking down? Or why are they
Yeah.
stuttering over their words? Or why are they suddenly shutting down? I just would have recognized a little bit better what they were going through.
Right. I think in high school, where and I was kind of friends with everybody, but you would just be like, man, that dude's just weird. He's just weird. Just leave him alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, nah, there's nobody. He's not weird. We just didn't know. We were so innocent back then.
But think about how many people in high school probably thought, why can she not sit still? Why can she
Right.
not concentrate? Because
The
I was
troublemaker?
all over the place. Yeah.
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 Was that you?
How did you know
Were you the
that?
one always in detention?
Anyway, yeah. So because ADHD was not really a diagnosis when I was younger. So now I look back and think, oh, I was just classic.
Right.
But I was good at making lists, and I was good at keeping track of things from my lists, and was a great multitasker. So here I am.
Is that a skill
That's
that
why
you
you were managing.
learned?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking. Like, is that a skill that you learned out of necessity from sort of being scattered, or because it's weird to be like, oh, I have ADHD. I'm also really good at keeping lists and being on task.
No, a list were, and I don't know if it's still this way, but that was like a primary kind of example of how people in my generation and younger managed ADHD. Is you just women kept lists of everything.
Yeah.
You had your grocery store list. You had your list of things that you needed to do that day. You had your list from things that were needed at work. And I just managed multiple lists all the time. And so I remember when I first saw that in relationship to ADHD, I thought, oh, yeah, that's so me.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I have an older brother. He's 56, and I really think at this point that he falls somewhere on the spectrum. But we're talking the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that was even a thing. I think probably like Rain Man is probably the first thing that brought
Not unless it was really
something like
severe.
autism
Yeah.
too.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I remember like Babysitter's Club books, like a character. This episode, I'm really dating myself here for reading Babysitter's Club. But like a character would have autism, and they would just be nonverbal, but they played the piano really
Right.
well. It was
You would
that
think
sort
of somebody
yeah,
really
more severe.
super high functioning,
Yeah.
super intelligence, or somebody super low functioning.
Exactly. Yeah, it was kind of all or nothing. And my son, he's on the spectrum, and at this point, he's 19. He's off in college, and you wouldn't even know at this point. Like, I would have to tell you about the time when it came to figuring out what to eat, and he only eats like chicken nuggets and hot dogs and doesn't like the smell of stuff. Then you're like, okay, now I see it. Which I guess would probably fall, if this was 30 years ago, under the weird. He's so weird about food. What's his hang up with food? How come he doesn't like it?
Yeah.
We learn as we go.
Yes.
So right now we're functioning on the spectrum, but really there's a lot more of these. I don't want to just limit to one thing, because we have a finite amount of time, and we could go on for 3 hours probably about this one topic.
We could.
But learning disabilities, I've got a list here, but could you all name? Let's go beyond autism and the autism spectrum, because I feel like we are, as a society, more aware of that a little bit at least. But what else are we talking about? Especially in kids and seniors. Let's go from one end to the other. Seniors too. They don't get a lot of love.
Yeah.
What are they
No, that's
facing?
true. I think, and ADHD, ADD, which we're all pretty familiar with, dyslexia, dysgraphia, a lot of those different types of learning disabilities. But I think, our seniors, as we age, we have those same challenges. But also then when you bring in dementia or other types of cognitive impairments, it sort of changes the the landscape a little bit. But what am I missing? Let's see: ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, dysgraphia.
Let's back. What is dysgraphia? Oh, I've not
So
heard of that.
yeah, it's where children struggle with. It's primarily handwriting. Sometimes fine motor skills can be wrapped up into that,
Okay.
but it's similar in the way that with dyslexia, how our brains, when we're writing out something, it's inverted or backwards often, like letters, numbers.
So could that explain bad handwriting? Like the sort of motor functions are affected?
Yeah,
By
sometimes.
that? That's interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
My son has the worst, like 5-year-old handwriting, and he also had poor fine motor skills when he was. We had to take him to a special class. He couldn't like cup his hands or catch a ball. Like it just sort of didn't work. Kind of looked like Ricky Bobby. He just kind of had his hands up. Then when he's like 3, and then we got in training, he could figure it out. But that's interesting. I never had a term for it, and I'm not saying that's what he had, but it does sound very similar to it. We're talking about mentioning seniors. We're talking about like ADHD thing. Do you age out of that? Are you 80 years old and you're just scattered?
No. Yeah, you don't age out of it. I think you learn how to adapt and how to manage and what is helpful for you in everyday tasks that you need to get accomplished. And then we also know and start to learn what gets us off track. And but no, I don't think you ever can really age out of ADD or ADHD.
It's not something that time, like maybe you just get so tired, as you get older, and you're like, I'm kind of scattered, but I just sort of want to sit here because I'm getting old and I'm tired. I don't know how. I'm interested in. I say we weren't going to talk about the spectrum as much, but here we go again. So, kids being diagnosed or ADHD, and then what happens right now? They're 12, 13, 14, 20-esque, the sort of generation that has been diagnosed better with this. I am interested in what happens when they're in their 60s or 70s, when they hit 80 and they're hyper focused on animal facts on YouTube. Like, I wonder what the patient care will be for them. Has there been any theory to that? Any thought of how we will treat the future generation that has these disabilities?
That's an interesting question. I think just from my own personal experience, my son was diagnosed with ADD, which it looks very different than ADHD. So for him, it wasn't so much, that he was bouncing off the walls or couldn't focus or just had, trouble kind of staying on task. For him, it was just, he was the daydreamer. He would just zone out, and you could be having a conversation and he'll be looking right at you, but he's not processing anything you're saying, because he's thinking about what he's going to be doing later tonight or whatever, whatever's going on. But now as as an adult in his 30s, he, interestingly, I don't think, and even just, what would have that been, the early 90s? I don't even think they understood as well then what was helpful for children. And so he has said to me, I wished I had tried, medication, and would that have helped?
Yeah.
So I think as you were saying, like when somebody gets older, they just have different things to try to help them be more successful. But
I did hear recently about a study that was, and I don't know if it was a study, but it was somebody raising the question about whether ADHD, what it looks like as you get older, because, I'm going to be 65 this year. And so I sit there and think, okay, what will that look like as I continue? Because I've never took medication, never had a formal diagnosis, but could pretty much, I nail every criteria. But so somebody was saying that as you get older, it can very much look like dementia. because you are used to having so many tabs
Mm.
open,
Mm-hmm.
but suddenly you're not able to keep up with all
You're more
those tabs.
scattered. Yeah.
And so it can look very scattered or forgetful at times. And so I thought, oh, well, phew, I mean, I
Yeah.
hope that's kind of true, because I do kind of forget things every once in a while. And I think, okay, where am I headed?
So are you going to be our guinea pig generation?
I will be
All the misdiagnoses will be on you, and all the poorly.
I'll be the one that can be studied for
Yeah.
future scientific purposes.
Figure
But
it
I
out.
do think that is kind of an area of science that's just continuing to grow as they look at what is the long term. Because, if you look back at my generation and ADHD, again, probably if it was diagnosed at that time, it was because it was very severe. And you probably just had a child who was unable to concentrate or complete any task. But, and that was not me. But I am curious to see where science will take this, and what will that mean for those who are really experiencing some type of neurodivergence in addition to the aging process, because we know that age-related cognitive decline is just normal.
Right.
But how will that impact how children and young adults have learned to manage a neurodivergence, whether that's dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD?
So somebody listening, they're hearing these different disabilities. I don't really know if there's a better word for it. And they're thinking, oh, okay, well that explains my niece or my nephew or my colleague. Yeah, they're kind of like that. Like it started to maybe raise a little bit of, well, that kind of makes sense. How do we adjust for that? Is it just sort of internal of like, okay, don't perceive their attitude as unfriendly. They're just doing their thing. Or is there some way that a person out there can help someone who's close to them with these disabilities? How do we adjust ourselves or help them adjust to us? I'm not sure how that goes.
Well, and I think it's really probably our generation and above that really struggles with that the most. I think kids have learned to just really adapt incredibly well. You'll hear young people today just talk about their friends who with certain, with autism or ADHD or dyslexia, and it's not as it's not a negative.
Right.
And so it's just a part of who their friend is. And I love that. I love the normalcy of this, because as we said earlier, 1 in 6 people have some type of hidden disability. So if we're looking at this in that framework, then we can look at it as normalcy and
Right.
not as something that needs to be separated and stigmatized.
Yeah, I feel like the kids are all right. My daughter's still in high school. She's going to be a senior next year. And she's in theater. So if you guys know anything about theater kids, they're very interesting characters.
Yeah.
And she's not. Like, she's weird. She's like that Alex Keaton. Here I'm dating myself again of the group. She's very like button down straight. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. But
Yeah, all right, good.
Everybody's watching this.
My goal for
"Who's
these
Alex
shows
Keaton?"
is to take a wide audience and to slowly shrink it down to a nub until it's just Family Ties enthusiasts. Now. So thank you for sticking with us on this show. So, but yeah, she's like the straight lady, but she talks, it's all different types. It's a lot of characters in theater, and it's like nobody cares.
Yeah.
In a good way. It's
Yes.
it's not like it, but it's just okay. The kids can roll with this.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that there's a benefit to having open discussions and not finding the subject matter taboo.
Mhm.
It used to, somebody would be like, "Oh, well, your son's on the spectrum." We did a test, son's on the spectrum. Oh my God, my son, my son said, "What can we do?" And now it's like, okay, well, now they wear like a snap bracelet, keep their hands to themselves. That was my son. Put in some earplugs at lunch so he's not overstimulated, and we're good.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Right.
And the kids see this. I think the kids are they're going to be a lot better off with this stuff than we are.
They are so much better. They're just so much better at just embracing everybody's differences and really just that's what makes us all unique. It's not about.
So your son at 30, like adjusted, like, because he came up in a weird time because it's still a little old school. I think. I don't know, I'm 46, so it's a little different. But also growing up into an age where we are more comfortable talking about this subject. So how has he adjusted? If you don't want to get into it, it's
Yeah,
fine.
no, I mean, wonderfully, but I think he had to learn what worked for him, and so and be sure that he had what he needed to be successful. And so that's just been what was helpful for him, and I think everybody kind of figures it out.
Yeah, probably from like that sort of like probably mid 30s down. I think probably societally we could start seeing an improvement on better diagnosis, but also sort of societal treatment. I
Yes,
guess. I mean, are we
yes.
seeing in your profession, your work, we're not. Are we still seeing like a societal stigma with disabilities like this, either from seniors, their kids are frustrated? Are we a little bit more empathetic to treating people?
You're going to get me on a roll here
That's
because
all right.
I'm very protective of Buckner participants, and I would say the one thing that I see within Buckner that is a little bit infuriating at times
Hmm.
is that you have people that have come in with a lack of resources, that lack of educational opportunities, a lack of financial opportunities. And along with that comes children that have gone undiagnosed,
Mm.
um, underrepresented in so many different ways. But as they come into the program, you realize they have a diagnosis that has just gone unrecognized. And so they've been labeled bad in school,
Yeah.
poor students, they failed, they're behind in many areas. And then when they come to Buckner, we have the opportunity to do some testing or to bring them into certain situations where they have more opportunities for some evaluation and some assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize this mother has been parenting two autistic children on her own for 8 years without any assistance in diagnosis. And then she's feeling coming into the program that she's failed as a mother.
Mm.
Her children are horrible. Nobody wants to be around them. And that may be an exaggeration, but I know mothers who felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly they're recognizing, oh, my child has a diagnosis, and they're feeling so much more confident about who their children are, about their role as a parent, but also able to get assistance for their child in areas that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
And so we really see this. I'm a huge proponent of public school. And part of the reason for that is because I feel like I know there's a lot of challenges with the IEP process and um, a lot of the accommodations that are made, but there is a willingness there to make them. And
Hmm.
so I appreciate that about our public schools. And so I've gone into different meetings with other school personnel and those that are doing services for children with a certain issue. And when you finally have a recognized diagnosis, you realize this isn't a child who is deliberately acting out.
Right.
This is a child with a need. Now, you combine that need with years of missed opportunity and poverty,
Hmm.
and then you have maybe some other dynamics going on, but at least we know what we're dealing with at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, well, so I mean, that's a whole other. Oh my God, we could do a
Mm-hmm.
whole other podcast episode on
Sorry.
That's a
on like
whole other.
underrepresented
Yeah.
demographic and
Mm-hmm.
treatment and diagnosis there. I didn't even think of that. But get this out there real quick. So finances does not have to be a factor in. Like, are there free resources to have your kid checked out if you suspect something? Are there clinic like
There are,
where can
but
a mom go when she doesn't have cash?
mm-hmm.
She's working two jobs trying to keep food on the table. But her kid's constantly in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
She thinks something's wrong. Where can she go to find out if something's wrong? Can she?
Yes, I mean,
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
not.
There's
And especially
waiting
in
lists.
Texas. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we have the most uninsured population in the nation, so we've got that battle going on. Medicaid pays for some, not for everything. And often what we find is that to get a diagnosis takes some type of other entity involved, whether it's Child Protective Services or because now there's maybe even a referral on that mother for having her children behaving in such a way, or her reaction to something that her children have done. So there's lots of different ways in which that diagnosis might come about, but I would say the school system is probably your number one um, intervention,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
they're the first ones that are seeing children or early or Head Start or early childhood
PCI.
education. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think those are your opportunities, but I still think a lot of children fly under the radar.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure Colby just got lucky, and his mom spotted that. I was one of these like, it's just boys will be boys. She spotted about a year early, but once you got that 504, suddenly everything starts to fall into place. The schools have to comply, and a lot of these are pretty simple fixes. I mean, for a parent or somebody out there, or maybe a friend who's got they know somebody who's got a kid that's got these problems. Um, like I can speak for my son. Like he didn't take any drugs. We didn't have to do a lot of doctor visits. Didn't cost us money. It was really simple things like earplugs when it's loud.
Mm-hmm.
He touched. He
Mhm.
liked to hold hands and hug. Once boys hit about 8, they're done with that. Do not hold my hand.
He
Do not
needed
hug
that
me.
sensory input.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he wanted to feel things.
Yeah.
So we got him a little stretchy bracelet that he could, kind of chew on a little bit and kind of play with.
Mhm.
Kept his hands off everybody. Suddenly, kids weren't mad at him. They weren't pushing him around. $2,
Yeah.
maybe $5 or somewhere.
Yeah.
Very simple fixes, but the first step was recognizing that something was possibly going on here,
Right.
and then getting the treatment. But yeah, but we had resources for that, and so I don't know if that speaks to everybody. Wow, that is that's a whole other angle, and actually, I'll see. I'm not going to put you on the spot here on camera, but October is Bully Prevention Month,
Mm.
and these two cross over
Oh, yeah.
a lot. And I'm also doing that campaign too. So I may be back in touch with y'all
Sure.
about doing an episode where we talk about that, because
Yeah.
there's so many
definitely
other avenues
crossover.
of this that I didn't even think about that you've mentioned that
Mhm.
we don't have time for, because we've also got 2 other topics. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to wrap this up. Do we have any
Okay.
final thoughts before we move on? Any calls to action, or just be nice, have patience and grace?
I think that, and then also, I mean, I think just really for everybody to have an appreciation for our public schools,
Yeah.
and for those that are working on IEPs and 504 plans, and for those doing special education services, and
Yeah.
because they're working so hard
Yeah.
to make sure our kids get the very best of services and are successful. And I don't think they're given near the props that they need to be given.
I agree on that. And hugs. I would tell, after Kobe was diagnosed, people at church stuff would ask me, "Oh, I think my kid," and I would always say, "Hug them." Like whenever you want to spank them,
Yeah.
don't spank them,
Yeah.
hug them. Just
Yeah.
hug it out.
Yes.
I feel like that goes so much further to stress relief. So hugs, and also props to our public school and the teachers and administration.
Well, I
Okay.
would say real quick too, just for our aging population, or anybody struggling with dementia,
Yes.
or
Mm.
another type of cognitive impairment, is obviously we want to support them, but is also remembering caregivers and partners and friends, because it changes that whole relationship for them too, and that dynamic. And so how can we how can we support them, better and differently too, I think is really valuable.
Isn't it telling though that we started off this segment and I was like, let's leave the spectrum and stuff and let's talk about more like seniors, and then we went straight back over to the kids, and
That's important.
we
It's all
completely
important.
left our seniors in the dust. If there's a better example of society in this room, I don't know what is. We're definitely going to have you back because we need to talk about that too. And I feel like we completely got off the plot with our. I'm a terrible host.
Yeah,
No.
next time.
All right. Well, next time, part
There's
two.
a lot to discuss.
There's so
later.
much. There's
Yeah.
no way we can fit this in a few minutes. So, all right. So we're going to have our next group in. We're going to talk about our next topic, and we will take a break.
All right.
And we're back. Now we've got our second segment going here. I am joined with Shakayla and Shavana. Both work under Amy Curtis's team. Is Amy the boss?
Amy is the boss.
Yeah.
Is Amy the boss here?
The head
All right,
honcho.
we all sort of bow to
Yeah.
Amy's greatness. She's the boss, so I get to say that. But I want to thank you both for joining me, taking time out of your day for speaking about this. And your part of this is mental health. Last one was cognitive, learning disabilities, things like that. Now we're talking about, what are we talking about? What falls under mental health?
So in this realm, in regards to, we're talking about maternal mental health with postpartum depression,
Okay.
anxiety, which leads to psychosis later on, but most
OCD.
OCD.
So obviously I know very little about postpartum depression. Is that a thing can men have postpartum depression?
Absolutely.
That is how ignorant I am of this topic. I don't even know if it's something that I can have.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to school me a lot on this. So a guy can.
Mm-hmm.
So what is postpartum depression then?
So postpartum depression is, depression that shows up during that postpartum period. So, but I think it's important to say that it's not just during the postpartum period. You can have perinatal depression. So a lot of times it will show up during the pregnancy as well. But specifically during the postpartum period, it's that depression, that sadness, that hopelessness, that feeling like you can't get out of bed, that you can't eat, those type of symptoms. And it's hard during that phase because this is the time you're supposed to be happy, that you're supposed to be in love with this baby and all these things. But now you're going through all of these adjustments and you're just not feeling the way that you should.
Yeah, and great, because a lot of reasons that men don't realize that they can become part of this as well is because society itself tells men, hey, you know what, you're strong, you need to be the provider, don't show these signs of weaknesses. And so for men to actually, for it to be acceptable that men can actually have this too, is kind of hard for some men to realize, oh, this is what I've been struggling with.
And also I think it's also because during the pregnancy the woman is checked on, right? After you have the baby and the mom, they go to their visits. There's no visit for the man to say, like, how are you doing? How are you adjusting? And so that a lot of times it's missed. And a lot of men, just like you, don't know that, hey, I can struggle with this.
That is interesting. Yeah, I did feel so my kids are 19 and 17, so we're sort of long past that at this point. But there was a feeling of, like, at work, nobody cared. And we had all these baby showers for expectant moms, and I would go and I would bring diaper, gifts and stuff. And they'd pass around, money and stuff. And then when it was my turn, it was nothing. Mm-hmm. It was actually nothing. And it really did upset me. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that really falls under part, but it was the sense of like, oh, I'm not supported. Mm-hmm. I'm really on my own. That was with the firstborn. Secondborn, I already expected it, so it didn't bother me as much. But when Colby was born, it was like, nobody seems to really care.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this.
Well, that's exactly what it feels like.
Interesting.
But then think about that. Did you tell anybody that?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because nobody cared. I mean, nobody's going to care and anything that I say will just be seen as whining.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times when, women or men are going through that postpartum, that's how they feel, that they can't tell anyone. And especially, women, there's that pressure and that stigma on, you have to be this perfect mom. You have to jump in and be able to read your baby's cues like that. You have to be in love with this baby and want this baby all around you, all on you. So when they're not feeling that, now they're scared. They're scared to tell someone because then they're going to be like, well, you're not meant to be a mom. You're a bad mom if you're not able to do these things or you feel this way. Or there's the stigma of, if I tell this doctor, they're going to say that I'm an unfit mom and they're going to take my baby from me.
That's interesting. The threat of that.
Yeah, and that's why there's a lot of couples, women, men who have this, and it goes untreated. And that's what the scary part is because of that fear, the underlining fear of what are people going to think about me and what's going to happen to my family.
And the longer, postpartum period is a lot of times, from when the baby's born to a year, they like to say. But if during that whole year it's going untreated, well, now it's going to continue going on. You're still experiencing
So this
depression.
doesn't just fade away. You adjust to family life. The kid's a little older, sleeping through the night. It doesn't just stop.
No, so that's the difference is, there is an adjustment period. So there's normal adjustment issues when you have a baby. One, there's the hormones. So there's something called the baby blues where, and moms and dads can get that. That's like that 2-week adjustment. You're not sleeping. All of this stuff just happened. You have this baby. You're adjusting to the schedule, sleep, all of those things. But when it falls into depression that's where now it's not fading. Now you're really emotional, you're crying, it's really interfering with your daily life. And it's not going to go away unless it's treated.
Wow. Well, I thought you called it baby blues. I literally just thought that was a George Strait song. I did not know that was an actual thing. Now I'm like, is that song actually deeper than I thought it was? So yeah, so you have like this period, and I get like you would have like a period of adjustment. You went from sort of single, even when you're married, you're still kind of single. You're still kind of doing things you want. You've got this routine, and now there's a new life, and your life is almost kind of over. I don't mean that as negative as it sounds, but it's like your life now is given to this thing, and I could see like that being mind blowing for someone and being a hard adjustment. But I guess I've never really thought about just how deep that goes and how long that can last. I figured, well, you get used to it and things go back to normal. Well, the new normal, because now you've got a life that you're forever going to be taken care of. But that is not the case. And I think you said earlier that this can worsen. But into what? How bad can this go if untreated?
Well, like with any type of mental health disorder, if it's left untreated, if it goes undiagnosed, then there's no way to heal it. So that's where being open with your doctor, being open with the support that you have around family, friends, being able to talk about it. Because I'm sure that when we're talking about it with you now, you're like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I remember this and I remember feeling this way,
Sure.
but then again, did you tell anybody? No, because I'm not saying that you're holding on to anything right now.
Yeah, no. I'm fine.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the severity too, it's like, for you, for example, feeling just unsupported and things like that. So there's that, but then there's also some, moms or parents, they feel, okay, maybe my baby's better without me. Or, maybe it would just be better if, me and the baby aren't here, so then now it's really severe and
We're
that
talking
needs
about
to be
taking it to
treated.
a dark place. This
Yeah.
is more than just like I'm crying and drinking a glass of wine in the tub.
Exactly.
This is
Yeah. It's a very serious thing, and I'm glad that now people are starting to realize and talk about it, because not only that, it interferes, your attachment with your baby.
sure. Yeah, and I guess and then that could that possibly snowball into affecting that child? Now the child does not have a healthy, loving attachment with mom, and which is incredibly important, especially in the younger ages. And now we're going into preschool, school, and the child doesn't have that, whatever they need from that. Again, I'm speaking from a very ignorant place. And will that affect the child then in their dealings now with kids, with authority figures possibly? Are we creating like a generational trauma now from postpartum going unchecked?
Well, it actually starts within the pregnancy as well. It can start within the pregnancy as well. And that looks like low birth weight, premature birth. So it can actually start during pregnancy. And then, yes, it can affect motor development, cognitive development. that first year of life, that nature and nurture that Eric Erickson talks about so much, is so important in that baby's first year. Trust, mistrust. So if I can't bond with my child during that first year of life, it does create some attachment issues further into the child's life, because that foundation is so important in that first year. But again, it does and can show up in during the pregnancy as well.
Yeah,
Do we have numbers on this? Like how common is this? Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse?
So 1 in 5 women right now experience it, some type of pregnancy depression or anxiety during pregnancy. Postpartum, it's 1 in 7 women. For men, it's 1 in 10 right now. But as far as depression, I think it's about 14% of women actually postpartum. And then as far as psychosis, that number is really, really small, like 2%.
So we're seeing maybe better diagnosis picking this up, because I'm thinking back to the 50s.
Yeah.
Mothers back then would take mother's little helper, little pill they would take, and then they would go sleep, and the kids went outside and played all night. It was very common. There was a lot of alcohol involved. Speaking with some family member, going back to those days, hearing stories, and it's like, oh, was that how this was dealt? Maybe back then. Does that explain? The kids will talk about like, we just played all day. We didn't come in, whatever. We came home from school and mom slept and we were outside playing. And it's like, oh, was this how they dealt with these feelings back then? I don't know if the studies go back that far. How far back does this even go?
I think, it's more recognized now. I don't know if they always had the language for it. And I know that now there are screenings for it. Women are getting screened for it at their pediatrician appointments, or the baby's pediatrician appointments. They're getting screened for it when they go to the OB for their 6-week checkup. They're getting screened for it now.
Okay, so this is maybe not the forefront, but this is definitely something that is universally looked at. It is acknowledged, accepted. This is part of the.
Not all states are doing that.
process.
Yeah.
No? Oh,
Not
okay.
all
Getting
states are
there.
doing this.
It's getting there. It's definitely not acknowledged and talked about enough, but it's getting there. It's way more than when I had a child 7 years ago. It's talked about way more than even 7 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. This would be an interesting topic. I may bring this. I don't know. Maybe open a can of worms, bringing this home, and asking my wife, because I don't really remember this coming up. Yeah, there would be, obviously there was an adjustment, which is inevitable, and I remember her talking about just being up at night feeding him. He wouldn't go back to sleep and just crying.
Yeah.
Which if I were in that situation, I would probably cry too, of not being able to sleep and a crying kid. I didn't think there was anything strange or, unique to her about that. I feel that would be everybody. But I wonder if that was something that she was also going through. It's hard because I think men, we know so little about this that a spouse probably wouldn't even feel comfortable bringing it up. A guy wouldn't even think about asking. I didn't. And I care. I love my wife, and I didn't even think this was a thing. So is this something that more men should definitely be paying attention to? Being a supportive spouse?
For sure. And, I always would teach that men are going to recognize it before the woman. You're going to recognize in your spouse, hey, you're a little bit different. You're going to recognize it before she will, before a doctor will, before her family will, because you're with her. And I always say, too, when you're having those conversations during pregnancy, when you're talking about the baby's names and these dreams and the hopes that you have for your family, you have to talk about what are we going to do during this postpartum period? How are we going to talk about this? Do you feel safe coming to me when you feel a little off? So opening up that line of communication so that when those things come up, you're talking about it. Who is our support person? What are we going to do when this comes up?
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective. Because I know, so like for my, it was, you sleep, I'll feed the baby, I'll change the diaper, you need diaper change, and trying to help where I could. but it never occurred to me of, do you need to talk? What do you need? It was we're just so focused on the baby, and part of that might actually be a little bit of the problem too, is that nobody's focusing on the adults also taking care of the baby.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. And I think it's also
Interesting.
important to say too that it's not it it doesn't make the mom or the dad a bad parent. It's not their fault. So, even saying that, it does interfere and it can, change the trajectory of a child's life and how they attach. That's not always the case. But I don't want to put that stigma on to where like, oh, if you have this, now your child's going to
Yeah.
be, you're messing up
Doomed
your
to
child.
real life.
Yeah. So just kind of that disclaimer.
Well, I think like this is a feeling that's more common than people may realize. So you're not alone in feeling this way. If you are feeling, if you're mom and dad and you're at home and you're feeling these feelings, probably separate from each other. One does not know how the other's feeling. Is what I'm starting to realize. You think you're the only one. You think you're not stepping up or doing your part. That is absolutely not the case. Probably your partner in this probably also has the same feelings. And other people have gone through it too.
And I think that's the important thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't look the same for everybody. And it's not going to just hit this certain population or this type of person or this type of home. It can happen to anybody.
Yeah. There are risk factors to where, there are certain people that may, like if you already have a mental health diagnosis, you are at a higher chance. If you don't have that support, you are at a higher chance, single parents,
Military.
military families, underserved population. So, Hispanics, Blacks, you are more likely to get it, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to knock on your household.
Right.
know.
Yeah. It seems like it could be anywhere. So if you are feeling that way, if somebody's listening to this, and whether it's them or maybe my sister or my sister-in-law or my brother or something like that, who do they go to? They just go to a doctor.
They can go to a doctor, their OB. There's support groups online that they can go to. They can come to us.
Yeah, they can go to us.
Who's us? Just Buckner in general?
So me and Shavana work for our Life Design maternity program. So we are maternity counselors. We do perinatal mental health as our
That's why you're
focus.
so smart. I didn't even life design. I've worked at Buckner for 5 years.
Okay.
I did not know it. We are involved in so many aspects.
Yeah.
I can't even keep track of it all.
So when Buckner says they start from the beginning of life,
We really
this
do.
is the program.
This is the beginning.
This is the beginning. Our program is the beginning of life.
Yeah. We
That's
support,
fascinating.
these parents from pregnancy all the way up until their child is 3.
Child is 3. That is some important years. And so, are you seeing like real success? I know you're probably not gonna be like, "Nah, it's terrible." But like, no, it doesn't work. But from when you started till now, have you seen an uptick? Is this something that's catching on? What are some of the success stories you've seen come from this?
I think that there's more awareness, kind of like what you just said. It's we're here, and a lot of people know about Buckner through the adoption and foster care. But when we're talking about this program, they're like, "Wait a minute, I had no idea." So that definite awareness in the community is definitely has definitely started to where we're bringing in moms who can trust the program because if they've heard about Buckner, they can trust the program that's here to help them. As far as counseling, yeah, we're getting a lot of clients.
And I think
Yeah.
what's really good is that the clients that we're getting are clients that have never gone to counseling, would have probably never gone to counseling. But because that awareness is out there and more people are realizing like, hey, this is a real thing and you don't have to suffer through it, alone, that more clients are coming to us. And I think that's a success in itself, is that people aren't suffering, in silence anymore.
There is such a societal taboo with mental illness. Even the term mental illness, like that sounds like you're in a straitjacket, locked in a padded room somewhere. And that is not the case. That is a parent at home crying alone. It's something just that simple that's probably pretty universal. kind of probably all sort of been in that spot at some point. And it's great that people are feeling more comfortable coming forward and talking about these issues. Um, yeah, I thought I had a question at some point about coming forward. So, can anybody get in contact with Buckner and move from there? What is the process?
So for our program, yes. So as long as they're in the state of Texas, we can serve them. So we do virtual or in person, again, as long as they're in Texas. And yeah, they just can reach out to us. We are on the website, the Buckner Maternity Services. Yeah.
That's so great. I mean, we've been here for 150 years, so Buckner's not going anywhere. But it's so fascinating to discover other avenues that we take to help people in different ways. I'm learning something new all the time. Been here for 5 years, learn something new every day about it. Well, I think we're probably at the point where we're going to wrap this up. But before we go, though, any final thoughts? Any call to action from our folks out there listening? Whether they're feeling this, or maybe they think they've got a friend who's going through something like this, they just reach out.
Yeah, and just to know that they're not by themselves.
Yeah.
What they're feeling is quite normal, and that there's people there that are compassionate and want to help,
Yeah.
and can create that safe space for them.
Another great resource is PSI or postpartum.net, I think. They have a ton of support groups. They have a hotline that, people, moms and dads can call.
It's 24 hours,
24-hour hotline that they can call and talk
multiple
to.
languages.
I feel like a lot of these feelings probably come out at like 2 a.m,
Yeah.
3 a.m, when you're really feeling this, and there's no distractions to kind of keep you occupied.
Yeah, that's a great resource. Even if they want to just learn more, it's a great resource to go on that website and learn more.
Well, I know I've learned a lot about this. I knew very little. When I saw the notes that you were talking about, I was pretty excited, just because it's something that I know so little about, and I'm a father of 2, and I don't even know about this stuff. So I want to thank you both for taking the time to talk to us about it. And with that, we're going to wrap up this, and we will go into segment 3. We're back, and we are joined once again
Sorry.
with Amy, who's back for another round.
As
Couldn't stay away.
Yeah, I could.
And but wouldn't dare dream of missing all this. And doctor accent, is that right? Doctor, we've got a doctor.
She's a doctor.
Oh, you're a doctor too? How come you didn't flaunt it?
I don't. There's nothing to brag about.
Do it now.
It was that ADHD kicking in that we talked about.
Oh yeah, it just
earlier.
kind of just went right
Just
over.
could have had to go right into keeping school going.
Well, Dr. Shante Atkinson, thank you for being here. And so for this next segment, we are switching gears. We are talking about substance abuse, alcohol abuse. We're tying also into PTSD. These are things that you absolutely would not be able to tell if you were in a grocery line. This is probably disabilities that affect, obviously, relationships and people probably the closest to you, who I imagine would be the most hurt or affected by it. So that's enough of me talking about this. What are we talking about when we're talking about substance abuse and alcohol abuse?
So when we're talking about substance abuse and alcohol abuse, it's more so when you're past that limit of misuse. So abuse it's impairing your judgment. It's impairing how you show up in the lives of your friends, your family members, your coworkers, and it's really impeding how you function. So that's the abusive part of it, is I'm waking up having a substance, a mood-altering substance. I'm having a drink in the morning when I'm first waking up, but before I go to sleep, just throughout the day, you need it to essentially function, is what people feel like. And so that's where you're seeing that abusive part of it. And it really does pour over into other areas of a person's life, because they don't understand, or not that they don't understand, but they're needing more support and help with stopping. And really having that support is what they need. But in times of abusive tendencies of alcohol and substances, they're so wrapped up and consumed in the next drink, the next high, that they're isolating themselves from those friends and families that could support them.
Well, is it possible to say that it didn't start out that way? The person who is now abusing a substance probably didn't start out thinking, I'm going to start abusing a substance today. My New Year's resolution is to abuse a substance. Like it started innocently enough or some sort of escape or maybe, I don't know. How do we get to abuse?
That's a really great question. No, people do not just wake up and say like, "This is what I'm going to do." Oftentimes, it's a slippery slope, and so a person can say one drink is enough versus someone who is abusive. One drink is not enough. One drink is too many. And so someone who really does have a substance abuse disorder or a substance abuse problem, they're not going to be able to stop themselves. And I know it seems odd to say, "Oh, you can't stop yourself. You can stop yourself," when in reality, it's like there's no off switch. There's only an on switch. Once they're started, they're unable to just stop.
Are there other disabilities though that tie into that make a play?
Well, I was going to say
Are we,
that.
Are we reading each
Yeah,
other's mind
I think
here?
we're reading each other's minds because we've been talking about hidden disabilities,
Right.
and so many of the things that we've talked about. I mean, when you think about substance abuse and alcohol abuse and even PTSD, there's so many other hidden disabilities that tie into that because sometimes it is self-medicating. So if you're experiencing chronic pain, which is a hidden disability, then you may become addicted to opioids. You may become addicted to alcohol. There's other things that you're doing to kind of diminish the amount of pain, emotional, physical pain that you may be feeling. So I think it could start off oftentimes with some type of self-medicating to kind of just drown out the noise of whatever they are experiencing.
So it probably kind of comes from an innocent place. Like I either don't want to suffer, I don't want the people around me to feel this. So this helps me calm down or escape. I remember it's still on topic. Whatever, I'm hosting it. We'll talk about it. So I remember as a kid, Kurt Cobain, notorious heroin user. And I remember him talking about in an interview of the reason he started doing heroin was because he had chronic stomach pains. And the only thing that numbed it, like weed didn't do it, but heroin actually did it. And that's how he got addicted to it. So that always stuck with me. I think I was in like 7th grade or 8th grade or something like that, and idolized Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. Still kind of do. But that always stuck with me of like, the DARE program. We had that every week. But I think that almost did more for me of, then he killed himself. But it was like, oh, how easily that could be. Like he was trying to treat a problem that he had, and now he's addicted to heroin, which even as a 12-year-old, is about almost as worse as it gets. But now I see when we were talking about PTSD a little bit before we started filming, oh, that's how that ties in. Golly, I'm so ignorant of these topics. Of PTSD, and you drink or you take a substance to cope. You're self-medicating, whether it's beer or pills. I don't know what do we see more common than others? How are people?
So the most common substance abuse and misuse is actually alcohol.
Okay.
In the United States. It's alcohol. And when you think about the prevalence of alcohol, there's practically nowhere you can go now where there's not alcohol. And so imagine for someone who does struggle with alcoholism or other substances, that's like, oh, well, I'll have some beer, because maybe that's not your drug of choice, because that is the leading one in the US is alcohol. And for Americans, we're so used to seeing the commercials. We're used to going to the grocery stores and being able to buy it, or going out to eat. Now they have it in children's restaurants, like Chuck E. Cheese has an alcohol.
Right.
Like it's in so many places that you really have to stop and think about, well, what is someone who does suffer from substance abuse or alcohol abuse, which is the most common, where can they go where they're able to quiet their mind or quiet that temptation and have a sober life?
Okay. So that would be, well, you're thinking about Chuck E. Cheese having beer, and that actually makes sense because as obviously I am Chuck E. Cheese, right? Like that's what I grew up with. And so as I grow, they want to cater to my dollar, especially now that I actually have money as an adult. Well, let's keep them going to Chuck E. Cheese. Let's get beer in their hand, which to them is just good marketing to keep the adult money flowing. But you think sort of unknown to everybody, it's a bit insidious.
Yeah.
because now I can drop Chuck E. Cheese can babysit my kid,
Yeah.
and I can pound a couple. Wow.
And then think about when you asked where did it start, and so that even goes back to, well, I'm seeing my parent normalize this, an adult drink, or however they're phrasing it, and so then you have children at an earlier age. Oh, well, can I have some of that, or what is that? There, that curiosity is sparked, and so then that curiosity turns into, when they're teenagers,
Right.
oh, well, maybe I'll taste it, or maybe I'll do this. And so the introduction is becoming much earlier for substances, especially alcohol, but also in other substances. Similar, you mentioned an opioid earlier from Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, Kurt Cobain.
So substances are sometimes introduced from, you get a severe injury, and so you're put on an opioid for a specific period of time, or you're having sleep issues, or you're an insomniac, and you're given these prescription medications. But what happens when you're being taken off of those prescription medications and you're still searching for that feeling that you had? And so it's really being mindful of what you're taking, and then how it's impacting your body. Because if those things aren't in alignment, like when people are prescribed medication, is really being honest with your doctor and saying, hey, I think I need to get off of this one because it's doing something to me that I don't like.
Okay. So almost being an advocate for yourself instead of just going, well, the doctor prescribed it, I guess I need to deal with it. Like, you can have that conversation.
Yeah. And I think a lot of places, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but I think some places are getting better with pain management and how long they're prescribing medications, especially opioids. I have seen firsthand, being in LCDC, that some places are much better about, okay, this person has been on a particular medication for 6 months. It's time to take them down to a lower dose because of the long-term impacts. And you don't want to perpetuate addiction, especially when someone is unaware that they're addicted to something, because that can all, hence the invisible disability piece of it is, oh, I wasn't aware that this was a problem, that I can only go to sleep if I take this amount of pills. I didn't realize. And so that's where the misuse of substances comes in versus the abuse, because they're not even aware that, oh, this is substance abuse.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of, like, earlier we talked about how, like, a kid could see, alcohol's in the house, pills in the house, and it sort of affects them. But is there a genetic propensity for this as well? My dad was abused substances or something like that. Does this also make me susceptible to pain meds or alcohol?
So, not exactly to one thing in particular. Like, if your grandparent suffered from alcoholism, are you immediately going to suffer from it? Not necessarily. Okay. However, the propensity is there. Yeah. Of, okay, there's something that there's a term for it, but there's something that you are more inclined to be on that slippery slope of, like, oh, your addiction may not be alcohol, it might be your workaholic. It may turn into have exercise addictions. And so it's there where you kind of can fixate on certain things, but it may not be the exact substance or like alcohol like that.
Is that something you almost have to regulate yourself? Like, you have to know your own limits? And I say that, of course, I'm a narcissist. I'm going to make this about me. So I had my gallbladder removed several years ago, almost 10 years ago. It's the only surgery I've ever had, and they put me on morphine. I really liked that morphine. It has become a joke. My kids, how much I was like, this stuff's amazing. The Jell-O tasted chef's kiss on morphine. But it made me, I was like, I need to be nowhere near any sort of pain anything that would be normal. I liked it way too much. And I'm almost like, do not prescribe me anything kind of at this point, just because that one experience. That might be a bit extreme in my case, but is that something that like a person would be, boy, I sure do. When I was in college, I really liked partying. I probably shouldn't do that now. I'm married or have a kid. I should.
But throw
pull
in
back.
some trauma to that. I mean, and that's where I think it gets complicated. Or throw in some adversity, whatever that adversity may be, whether it's poverty or financial challenges or stress, even. Because if you have that propensity, but you have great coping skills, you may be able to say, you know what, I know I need to stay away from this. I can't do this. But if you don't have those same coping skills, if you faced adversity and stress or some particular trauma, then you are more likely to say, "Give it to me." I mean, let me just escape for a while.
Right. Yeah, because I don't have any
Right.
of that at all, and even in that, I was like, oh, I gotta stay away. But yeah, what if you're homeless? You're
Right.
16 and you're being abused, or 12 or something like that. Yeah, are you almost grateful
To
for
have the
something that
release.
kind of
Yeah.
numbs the thoughts or the
And I think
feelings?
most addicts would probably say that there was a period of time where they just wanted to escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, that's the word, is escape. Like, they don't want to deal with reality, and this is how I escape. And sometimes, to your point, they don't have that support in place. And so it's like, well, this is all I know.
Sure.
And this is what feels safe to me, is using a substance or abusing a substance is where I feel my safest and not vulnerable. Because there's a level of vulnerability for people that were addicts or very abusive of substances, that when they're sober, that's when reality comes back in, and that's when the pain comes back, that's when the memories of abuses come back. That's a great segue to post-traumatic stress syndrome and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, what is that, and how does it happen, and really, how do people cope with it?
Yeah, because this isn't just. I know I first started hearing about it with veterans, like Chris Kyle come
Right.
back, and he was very vocal about it, and talking about therapy. But it's not necessarily that. It is trauma. It is things that you have been through. Which kind of ties back. We're talking about escaping reality, using it as a way to escape. How do we get someone to start confronting reality? How do you go from wanting to escape it to now dealing with it? That feels hard.
The therapist in me will say therapy.
Oh, well, that might be the right answer, though.
I mean, and I'm a military brat myself. I am a proud Air Force brat.
All right, yeah.
And my siblings, they're all in the military now. But in terms of how do you deal with it, I tell them all the time that they're one of the top 3 people in terms of demographic of who is diagnosed with PTSD. You have veterans, and people who have dealt with or been privy to serious abuse. So those are your, like you mentioned, veterans earlier. And so really saying it's okay to talk about it and bring yourself into, this happened, this really did happen. So not trying to glamorize it as, oh, well, this is this great thing that you did despite the adversity, but talking about the adversity and talking about the trauma of it. Because for PTSD, people do very well being able to talk in group settings about it. And so I'm sure from television, you all have seen lots of groups, and a lot of people are veterans or in the military. And so that's because they're reliving that, especially for active duty members that have been deployed and they return, or they go to places that are unlike our country, and so there might not be as many freedoms, and it looks different. That's a form of being put back into, or exposure, as we call it, exposure therapy, is when you're put back into a setting that has caused you trauma before, and so then it's like, oh wait, how do I deal with this in real time? We're seeing people that need to deal with the trauma that took place, identifying it, and then working through that.
And the treatment of this, like, just us talking about it, I feel like is already like a huge step forward in society. The fact that we're even having this conversation. Is this recent? Is this recent? How far back are we going here for treatment? Because I grew up in an age where I still know kids whose dads have like Vietnam flashbacks.
Right.
I'm talking about that, where being on a roller coaster ride and that sound triggers like a panic or something like that. You don't hear about those anymore. Not saying that it's not still there. I mean, obviously coming back from war, there's a lot of trauma, but it's also sort of talked about also with treatment in therapy. Is that more? I mean, obviously it's more common now, but is that the norm more than the exception? Are we talking about this more? Are people with trauma feeling like they have an outlet more than they used to? There was so much suffering in silence back in the
Yeah.
day.
Well, it still is. I mean, there are a lot of people that are still suffering in silence. But I would say that we're living in a time that I'm really grateful for, where there's so much science moving us forward, that we are understanding how our mind, body, and spirit all connect. So when something external happens to us, how we incorporate that into how we respond, our stress response, which can sometimes just be automatic, however, whether it's fight, flight, or freeze. There's so many different ways in which we incorporate traumas into our being, that good and bad. Some build resilience and some can just break down the person. And so that's the reason I second Shantae, therapy, number one. But also, I think along with therapy, as therapists, we have to recognize you're going to have to trade out addictions or habits. You're gonna you can't just say stop it. The great 70s, or I think it was 80s. The just say no.
Just say no. Yeah.
I mean that's a great concept.
So simplistic.
But it's way too simplistic for how really our minds and bodies
It's
and
not
spirits
realistic,
work, right? And so we have to really look at what is that individual need, what can compensate for that need, how do we build up the strengths to reduce the dependence on the outlet, whatever that outlet may be.
Does it present its own challenge, and does it have to be addressed uniquely when some of these invisible disabilities start to intersect one another? In some of the other segments we talked about, like the autism spectrum, or we talked about postpartum depression. What if you were also abusing a substance and you are, and it is a result maybe from postpartum, or you have some sort of cognitive disability? Does that change how we treat, how we approach that subject, or is that something that's hasn't even come into being yet? Is that something we're going to start seeing more of as maybe kids get older?
I would say that it's something that we don't see per se because we don't recognize it, but a trained person will recognize how are you coping, especially for complex PTSD or PTSD or CPTSD, complex PTSD. That's where you're seeing that with your first responders, your veterans, women who have had very traumatic birthing experiences, or men and women who are survivors of abusive situations. So that's where you're seeing that really complex trauma. And so when that's happening, sometimes there are times when it's being masked by substance use, how they show up even in the world. That's another very telling sign of, oh, maybe something is happening internally, and that's the invisible part of it, is we don't recognize it. They're responding the way that they're responding because of a traumatic event that they have experienced. I mentioned, like, for September 11th, 2001, which now every year, September 11th, it's Patriots Day, I believe is what it's called.
I don't know.
There's a name for it, but we celebrate it in America, and it's a day that, as someone who is military affiliated, is, while yes, that is a day that should be celebrated, it's also a day that needs to be in memorial, because for some people that was a very traumatic day. And so imagine the position that a person is in if they lost a loved one, or someone who was a first responder on that day. You see celebratory things happening on this day. Some people are off from work, whereas they're remembering the trauma that ensued. And so they might be self-medicating on this day. And so it's like, how do you identify that in a person, just to let them know, hey, I support you, I'm here for you, I see you? Because they may very well be waking up, putting on a uniform again to go out and do their job on the same day, on an anniversary date. And I think that with people who do have PTSD, it's overlooked because it is invisible, because a person can put on, like, for mothers who have had traumatic birthing experiences, the child is there now and they're loving on their child and all the things, and then they may still be dealing with pain from when they were in labor. And so those are invisible disabilities that people are living with, and it's just overlooked because people have learned how to mask it, be it in their everyday activities or unfortunately with substances. So it's just something to think about.
It is a lot to think about. Probably, I said before, and I think I probably even mentioned the podcast, is drinking from a fire hose. There's so much to that, and there's so much nuance to this as well. It is not a blanket, this happened to you, so this is what you're doing, and this is how you seek treatment. It just feels like almost it's case by case.
Yeah.
The way people operate, because we're all unique, and then there's just almost no blanket way of doing it. But let's say there is a blanket way of doing it. No, but what is an advice that we could give? People are listening. They know somebody, or they're going through it. I asked these in the other segments too. What can we tell them? Where can they go if they're having these feelings, or they know somebody who they suspect may be having these feelings? What's the first step in seeking help?
The first step in seeking help would be to, if you truly know someone that you think is experiencing PTSD, or maybe you don't have the terminology and you're just like, they act a little different when a particular thing happens. Just talk to them and ask them. Asking the question that's a start right there. Are you okay? What's happening for you right now? For example, this isn't a client, but an example could be someone who has experienced chronic homelessness, and when they come home and they have a notice on their apartment door, for them that may trigger, oh my gosh, I was evicted so many times before, and they fight, flight, or freeze, and they're just immediately in this frozen state. That's bringing up a traumatic experience. So just asking that person, what's happening for you right now?
Well, I
That's a
think
great start.
I think that is really great advice, because we're running up against the clock here. So to start winding down, I think that's really the takeaway in all three of these disabilities we've talked about is ask, are you okay? Don't be, for the people not experiencing these, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask somebody if they're okay, or don't wait for something to happen
Oh, absolutely.
before going out. And I guess if you're the person experiencing this, feel free to talk to somebody. I guess the takeaway. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Obviously, I'm going to go back to one of the first things I said is be kind to everybody. I mean, you just never know what other people are walking through. And if you are a person experiencing an invisible disability and you need support, there are resources out there for you, whether it's local resources with a therapist, but also there's the website, the Invisible Disabilities Network. I mean, they have tons of resources on their website to be able to support people in the community for a variety of different reasons and causes. So looking into those resources is always good.
Well, I was excited to have this podcast and sit down with y'all just because of how little I knew about this, and I've come away with so much more knowledge about the subject matter, which also is like, boy, I really didn't know anything. But now I'm a little wiser, a little more mature. Hopefully the folks listening to this will walk away a little wiser as well. I want to thank you both for taking the time to sit with us and talk about these topics. It was super informative. And I guess that is everything for today.